Hey, it's Jonathan Larsen with TYT Investigates, and I apologize for the spooky lighting, but it's not a Halloween theme. I happen to be in a hotel room in South Bend, and this is the best I can muster at the moment, so I apologize for that. And we're going to talk today about an interview that a police officer here in South Bend gave last night to a local radio host named Casey Hendrickson. And this is a news-making interview that I wanted to share with you. The officer, in this case, Captain Dave Wells, has something to say about TYT's reporting that I'll share with you in the live version. What I'm going to do is I'm going to read my rough transcript of it. If there are a couple words I wasn't able to make out, so I apologize if I've gotten anything wrong, but I will be posting links to it so that you can listen to it yourself and draw your own conclusions. What I'll try to do, since I'm on a plane today, I'm not sure I'll succeed, but what I will try to do is drop in the audio to the extent that fair use allows me to do so in the ultimate version of this after I'm live. So basically, just to give you a little background here, Dave Wells is one of the officers who was caught on tape back in 2011 in what has become known by the shorthand as sort of like the secret police tapes, right? These are the tapes that led to or played a role in Pete Buttigieg, as the new mayor, 3 months in office at the time, demoting the city's first black police chief, Darryl Boykins, and then firing in April 10th, I believe, Karen DePape, the civilian communications director for the police department, who first heard some of these recordings and then later transferred them onto cassette tapes for Boykins. So we reported back in September, and when I say we, I mean I was the reporter on the article, and TYT published it. We reported last month that documents related to the tapes, related to litigation around the tapes, include a lot of details about what was said on the tapes. Now, these documents appear to have originated with Karen DePape herself. They appear to be her words, based on, it's not clear whether it's her recollections or whether she was, listening to the tapes or the recordings at the time she wrote this down. So it's essentially her telling in these documents her account of what she heard on the tapes. How much of it is accurate? We don't know. How much of it is intended as exact quotation versus paraphrasing? I'd love to know. Do not know. So what happened last night was that, I should say, what we reported was that officers on the tapes referred to plans being made to have two of Buttigieg's donors, remember Buttigieg is not mayor yet, he was running for mayor, plans to have two of Buttigieg's donors influence Buttigieg to get rid of Boykins as the chief. Dave Wells is quoted, I believe I'm getting this right, I hope I'm getting this right, quoted as quoting someone else as saying it's going to be a fun time when all white people are in charge. And I don't have the quote in front of me, so I might have gotten some of that wrong, but that was the general gist of it. The point being that there seemed, in DePape's telling of what she heard, there seemed to be racial animus at the heart of, or at least at play in, the interest in getting Boykins out of there. Now, I should make a couple caveats here. I spoke to both of the donors who are named in the tapes, and they both denied it to me. So that's one thing. And that's important, right? That matters. And it's also said on the tapes that Buttigieg is said to be believed to be unaware that this is happening. Also, very important, right? In June of 2011, another officer is quoted as having spoken to Buttigieg and reporting back that Boykins is done. Again, remember, this is 6-7 months before Buttigieg would take office, allegedly, according to this account, reporting that Boykins, he's already decided not to keep Boykins. The campaign Buttigieg's presidential campaign has not disputed the authenticity of the documents, but they have dismissed our reporting as unsubstantiated stories or allegations, things along those lines. And in a sense, that's correct. They're not substantiated because the documents that Buttigieg's lawyers have, they have not chosen to substantiate them. So they could, but they have not. The authenticity of those documents is what Captain Wells was talking about last night. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to read some of the transcripts, and I'm just going to go through individual chunks in one block, and then I'll go back and address some of what's said there. That way, if I end up doing this, we can drop in audio after the fact. So, Wells brings up the TYT story. This we actually did two back in September. The first one on what's in the documents about the tapes, and then the second one came later, and that'll play into this in a moment because the second one, in the second story, I reported on documents that were given to us officially by the city itself, which confirmed that the documents are authentic, even though they've redacted some of it. So I'll get to that, but let's hear from the interview. Wells says, this TYT story is just off the wall. When I saw that, the editorialized narrative, we just stood back and laughed because I had never said, or others in the room that were listening to it, had never said anything like that. Where did they get this? I have every legal document that was during this entire 7 years. I was never privy to any of that information. I don't have those documents, and I'm afforded those documents through discovery as the plaintiff in the suit. So somebody is making this up. And they say, meaning TYT, well, we can't reveal the source. It's an unknown source where this came from. Yeah, no kidding, because somebody's making it up and telling it to TYT. So, and then the host, Casey Hendrickson, says, well, and to be perfectly fair to you, Dave, when the Young Turks came out with this, I had pointed out as well that we had no way of authenticating these documents, and they really don't like Pete Buttigieg, they're pulling for Bernie Sanders. Wells says, oh yeah. Hendrickson says, and they've targeted him. Who do you think is orchestrating this? I'll just use the term conspiracy with leadership in the department. Who's pulling the strings? Because there's a lot of people look at this and say the mayor is protecting you guys from potentially inappropriate comments that probably you don't want the public to know about. Wells says, nah. And then Hendrickson says, whereas there might be some things with a leadership battle within the department of who's going to take over. Wells says no. Hendrickson says the department. Wells says no. And then Hendrickson says, and that sort of thing. So I'm not going to, I'll have mercy and not address every single thing here, but I do think there are important points we should address here. Wells says, and before I go any further, I want to make one thing very clear here. Please do not go after Wells or Hendrickson. I'm going to be disagreeing with Wells and Hendrickson here, but that's okay, all right? This is not, the fact that I'm doing this video is not a call to arms. I don't even know if they're on social media, but please don't attack other people. Just generally speaking, please don't do that. Don't feel you need to do it on my account or TYT's account. Please don't do that. Whatever the officers did or did not do or say, this is a stressful, I'm sure devastating experience for them, and let's be human beings about how we pursue this. We can disagree, all of that. I'm not saying you can't boo him at, boo the president at a baseball game. I'm just saying, please do not, on my account, go out and leave nasty messages, anything like that. Be nice. So Wells says, and the reason I make that point here is because Wells and I might actually not be quite as adversarial as he seems to think. He says, I have every legal document that was during this entire 7 years. I was never privy to any of that information. I don't have those documents, and I'm afforded those documents through discovery as a plaintiff in the suit. So somebody is making this up. A couple things here. Wells and all other officers were involved in multiple legal actions. The documents that I reported on stemmed from Karen DePape, the communication director's lawsuit against the city. Wells was not a party to that litigation. So it's not clear to me why that why these documents, whichever ones existed before Wells settled that suit, Wells and Company settled that suit, why they would be entitled to this. Maybe they would be, maybe they wouldn't be. However, what I also want to make clear here is that Wells and the other cops settled their suit in November of 2013. The interrogatories, which formed the most substantive, detailed responses by Karen DePape, were sent to her by the city exactly 1 month, the month after the officers settled. Only after the officers settled did Buttigieg's attorneys then ask their questions of Karen DePape in these interrogatories. So I don't know what to make of the timing there, but if you settle your suit in November of 2013, the discovery process is probably not going to get you documents that weren't generated until after a request in December of 2013. The host says, when the Young Turks came out with this, I had pointed out as well that we had no way of authenticating these documents, and so I want to be clear that the documents have been authenticated. The second story we did in September mentioned the fact that we had now, through a public records request, not a secret source, not a deep throat, not a mystery, conspirator, through a public records request, which anyone can file. You don't need a subpoena, you don't need to depose someone, you don't need legal standing. All you need is an email address and a smile. And so they gave us, in response to our request, the documents. Now, they redacted them for sure, and this is the officer's report that DePape filed, and these are the interrogatories. And again, I'm not sure, yeah, as you can see, they're quite redacted. But these are documents that have been authenticated. Now, if you want to dispute whether the redacted sections say what we reported they said, well, one of the things we did was to line up what we had with the redaction blocks on some of these questions, and they all happened to match up perfectly. And we did that. We had published some of those redacted screen grabs before the official document came out, and lo and behold, they just happened to match up exactly. So my position to Captain Wells would be, I wish you had seen these documents. You should have seen these documents. You still can see these documents. You probably know a lot better than I do, Captain Wells, who you need to email at the city attorney's office to get these documents. And I encourage you to do them. We've posted them since the end of September. So, I could go nuts and I could screen grab my email inbox showing that it's coming from the city, but, then someone can accuse me of making that up. So if you think I'm making it up, go file, it's called an APRA request, named after the state's public records laws. So just go file the request. And I'm not suggesting, please, folks who are not Captain Wells here, I'm not suggesting that you go do that, because the very nice, fine, responsive people at the city attorney's office in South Bend are already struggling under the burden of journalistic and I suspect political public records requests. So please do not see this as me inviting everyone to file this. I'm just pointing out that anyone can. Okay, next exchange. Let's see what's said here. Hendrickson says, you are unaware of any of the conversations that would be on these police tapes from any of the plaintiffs, yourself included, that would indicate a desire to commit and or cover up or aid any criminal activity. And Wells says, that's correct. Hendrickson asks, are you aware of anybody on these tapes who has used racial epithets or any kind of discriminatory racist type language that would cause the public any angst, ire, or disapproval? Wells says, I'm not aware of any. I certainly didn't use any. That TYT story says I was talking in Ebonics or some, whatever that means. Maybe, I don't know. Yeah, I don't remember, but it wasn't anything. I'll tell you this, what everyone's looking for is the big N-bomb, and that's nowhere to be found. Hendrickson says, okay. Wells says, that's not on there. Hendrickson says, so then I guess the final question I would have for you, Dave, is the Young Turks who've released these documents, you're disputing the authenticity of the documents and what the documents say in the Young Turks report. Wells says, all day long. Hendrickson, okay. Wells says, and I'd love to know their source. Who is their source? Karen's not allowed to be a source. Her attorney's not allowed to be a source. I've been in every meeting. I never saw these documents. Hendrickson, and again, you would be privy to these documents via discovery. Wells, I'm sorry? Hendrickson, you would be privy to those documents via discovery. Wells, oh yeah. Hendrickson, so if the documents are authentic and you haven't been handed those documents, we've got another legal problem. Well, yeah, and the Common Council hasn't even seen them, and they mentioned it in their story. They have no legal means to get these documents. Hendrickson, which is one of the reasons Vorty, that's Common Councilman John Vorty, was talking about bringing Karen DePape in. Wells says, yeah. Hendrickson says, to authenticate, meaning they would simply ask Karen DePape, assuming her lawyer said it was okay, are these reports accurate? Are these documents authentic? Wells says, so there's operatives behind the scenes they're feeding, and you know that outlet, man, they're just out to sensationalize anything they can, and they were in town, and they wanted to interview us, and we all denied it, because we know what they're all about. They're not a legit journalistic outfit. Hendrickson says, no, they're not, the Young Turks are not. Wells says, so they can say all kinds of stuff and twist the story, so who do they go to? They go to the big talkers in town. Who's doing all the talking? Inaudible. I couldn't make it out. There are little cronies who, inaudible. So they come up with these little scenarios, how they think it went down, and then Hendrickson says, well, they didn't go to the biggest talkers in town because they didn't approach me. So let's unpack this. Wells is asked if he's unaware of any of the conversations, unaware of any conversations about a desire to commit and or cover up or aid any criminal activity. And Wells says that's correct. Well, we didn't report that Wells was on any calls where that happened. So that doesn't refute our reporting because we didn't report otherwise. In fact, the exchange that we did report involved a prosecutor on the phone with the captain whose line, Wells was a lieutenant, I believe, at the time. The person whose line generated these tapes was talking with the prosecutor, not with Wells, when there was some discussion about potentially making a ticket go away or even making an arrest go away if failure to pay the ticket led to an arrest. So that's one thing. We didn't report that Wells was party to or knew about anything along those lines. So that's not in dispute with our reporting. Hendrickson says, are you aware of anybody on the tapes who has used racial epithets or any kind of discriminatory racist type language that would cause the public any angst, ire, or disapproval? Now Wells says in the same answer, I'm not aware of any, I certainly didn't use any, and then he says, did I use Ebonics? Maybe. So I'll let that stand for itself. He also says, and I think this is important, and he is right about this, he says, what everybody's looking for is the big N-bomb. I believe and assume that he's referring to the N-word there, and that's nowhere to be found. He says, that's not on there. When I first came to South Bend, I actually didn't make a big point of looking for the tapes, or anything like that. What I was more interested in was the reality of what the tapes might indicate about South Bend police. And I did hear rumors that the N-word was used on the tapes. If it's used on the tapes, I'm not aware of it, and we didn't report it. We did, however, back in April, report allegations, both from a named source and from unnamed law enforcement sources, that the N-word was used. Not on the tapes, just out in the world. So that's I think the gist of what I wanted to say regarding this claim that's out there that the documents are made up, that they don't say what we said they said, or whatever it might be. Wells says pretty clearly he hasn't seen them. Well, that would explain why he doesn't know what's on them. It does not mean, regardless of what he thinks his discovery process in his various legal actions ought to have generated, it doesn't mean that we made them up just because he hasn't seen them. And again, I can't stress this enough. The documents that we initially reported on without sourcing them, were, after that report came out, provided to us officially by the city agency, the city's lawyers, through an email, which anyone can do by filing a public records request, just like we did. So a couple quick notes about the interview last night, and then if I can do this without making my camera fall down, I will see what you folks have been saying in the chat. Wells says, this business about Karen, that's Karen DePape, the communications director, finding this stuff by accident. She was doing all of this work. She found one conversation. Every other conversation after that was searched and looked for months and months and months. That's where the problem lies. So what he's alluding to there is the claim DePape makes in these documents, which I think she said publicly at the time, according to local news reports, that there was a malfunction in the recording equipment. And in doing quality control after the reboot, she listened to a line and heard stuff then. One of the things she makes clear in these documents is that the subsequent times, and I don't know whether this is true, but she says this in these documents, the subsequent times that she listened, at least to this line in question, in a way that's pertinent to all of this, it was at the explicit request of the city's lawyers. So if Karen DePape was crossing a legal line, it was because the city's lawyers told her to do so, which is an aspect that hasn't gotten a whole lot of attention here. And then finally, I want to read this passage real quickly. I shouldn't say read, because I may end up dropping in the sound afterwards, so I forgot to use clever language there that would cover either eventuality. Let's go to the next exchange. Hendrickson says, I appreciate the call, meaning Wells calling into the show, because I think you've answered some questions that people have had. And I hope that you don't get chewed out for it, because frankly, I think that the people need to know your perspective a lot better than what they've seen, because the articles say that the manuals say, the police duty manuals, say that these calls could be recorded. And that's the information. Wells says they're wrong. Hendrickson says, that's the information we've been going on for some time now. Wells says, that's not the first time they've been wrong. I've been biting my tongue for 7-8 years now. Again, let's unpack a couple things here. Hendrickson says, I hope that you don't get chewed out for it. And I believe what he's referring to there is various legal settlements that essentially say, and don't ever talk about the tapes or what's on them. My guess is that legal counsel, again, just speculative guess here, but it's fairly standard legal advice, is for them to say, do not go to the media and talk about this stuff. So I think that's what Hendrickson is referring to when he says that he hopes Wells doesn't get chewed out for it. And let me add this. I hope Wells doesn't get chewed out for it. I think everyone should be talking about what they know and what they don't know. If the officers, the original plaintiffs, don't have these documents and feel that that's something that should have been done, they should have been provided with these documents, go for it. Fight that fight. Go ahead, talk about it. And finally, he says, the articles that say that the manuals, the police duty manuals, say these calls could be recorded. What they're talking about there is the idea that it was okay to record the lines because all the police knew from the police duty manuals that their calls could be recorded. And Hendrickson refers to the articles saying that. And it seems to be implied that he's referring to TYT's articles. We actually didn't report that. And Wells kind of confirms that, saying, that's not the first time they've been wrong. I've been biting my tongue for 7-8 years now. We haven't been reporting on the tapes for 7 or 8 years. So it seems like they're actually referring to other news outlets reporting on allegations or claims or interpretations that say that the police manuals at the time told everyone, hey, your calls might be recorded, so you don't have any legal recourse if we listen in. If that was reported and it's incorrect, I'm sorry that happened. I'm pretty sure it wasn't us. And if it was reported and it's right, then I guess someo's owed an apology. So, like I said, I just want to close before I move on to the comments with my understanding about Casey Hendrickson is that he's a conservative, and that's allowed. You're allowed to be conservative. That doesn't mean that I'm not going to believe what you say. That if I find out that what you say is not true, then maybe I'll say, well, it's because you had a political bias. In this case, people are looking at TYT and seeing a political bias and using that as proof that what we're saying is not true. That's an ad hominem attack, and it's supposed to go the other way around. If it turns out that what we say is untrue, and if it's untrue in a way that happens to skew perfectly with our perceived ideological desires and hopes, then sure, bring that up. But if you bring that up first as proof that it's not true, that's not okay. So let's not do that. And I should point out, for those folks who might be seeing this and not familiar with us, what Casey Hendrickson said about TYT being all in for Sanders or whatever, that's grounded in reality. Most of TYT, most of the Young Turks, is opinion programming. And one of the opinions that you will hear the hosts, Cenk Uygur, and others, share all the time is that Senator Bernie Sanders is the bee's knees. And that's what the opinion programming side says. And it's not monolithic. There are others who are partial to Elizabeth Warren. But generally, is it a secret that it's a progressive voice? Clearly not. That's the brand. A little over 2 years ago, almost 3 years now, I guess, what they decided to do was to launch a separate branch of the company that would do investigative original reporting with a sort of just the facts ma'am kind of approach. And that's what we try to do. I don't think anyone succeeds at that perfectly all the time, but that is what we try to do here. So if someone's got a tip about, Bernie Sanders spending his weekends as a pirate robbing ships on the high seas or whatever, send it to the Young Turks at protonmail.com, and I will take a look at that. We respond to tips, whether they, when I say respond, I mean, please don't send me lots of tips saying you should cover this. What I mean is, when we get actual inside information that has not been reported yet, we look into it. Sometimes it's Democrats, sometimes it's Republicans. So that's who we are, that's what we do. The documents have been authenticated by the city. If Captain Wells doesn't like the fact that he didn't get them, I don't blame him. Okay, so let's see if I can touch my computer now without it knocking the camera down and see if we find our chat box. And pray that I remember to mute the computer. Okay, let's see. Okay, sounds like you guys can't hear me. That's bad. I'll have to see if I can adjust that in post, such as it is. Well, that's weird. The mic was far away from the paper, so it shouldn't have been that. Sorry about that, guys. Let's see. Video froze as well. Boy, this maybe this is a result of the hotel's Wi-Fi. I don't know. So I apologize. Let's see. Mr. Elder says I should always check with chat about audio and picture before he starts. I have gotten much better about it at home, but I'm on the road, so yes, I certainly should have. Let's see. You guys are talking about some of the people who used to work for the company. I'm not going to wade into that. It's not my place, and I believe the company has made statements about it already. Let's see. Rapid Burrito asks me to do some poking into the Alamance 12. I confess I have not heard of the Alamance 12. Let's see. Boy, I hope I'm not going to have to. Kalita says I'm going to have to redo this. Well, maybe I will. Let's see. I'm going to skip to the end and see if you guys can hear any better. Looks like not. All right, so I'm going to cut the chat short. I apologize for that. Oh wait, now Orange Pico says the audio is fine enough for me. So I guess what I'll do is I'll cut the audio short and see if I can replace this video with one where I can boost the audio that I do have. So I apologize again for that. And if you do have thoughts about what I've said here or questions, just drop them in the comments. Hadija Brahim asks me to wait, so I'll hang out for a second and wait. Hadija Brahim asks, what is my Twitter? Thank you so much. It's at JT Larsen. That's JTLARSEN on Twitter. And Nathaniel Earl says he heard me fine. Thank you. I'm glad someone did, and I'm so sorry, everyone else, about that. Like I said, I'm in a hotel room, and I'm doing the best I can with the equipment and the Wi-Fi connection that I have. So yeah, I will. What I'll do is, if you're interested, if you're still listening or trying to listen, I'll replace it with proper audio. And with that, I'll remind you guys. We do this every weekday at 11:30, only usually with better sound. I'm on a plane today back home, so tomorrow should be technically a little bit more accomplished, I hope. So I won't even bother at this point saying, if you like what we did here, because you have no idea what we did here, I won't ask you to share the content or subscribe. But hopefully you will continue to take care of each other, take care of yourselves, and I hope join us again tomorrow when I'll have audio and a mic and everything. So thank you and apologies again. Bye guys.